What's going on, my beautiful people? Welcome on in to yet another edition of the Mafia Huddle, hosted by yours truly, Carl Jones. Before we go any further, stop what you are doing. Make sure you tell your sister, your mother, your brother about the things we're doing here on the Mafia Huddle. We're itching closer and closer to my favorite time of the year, the draft. And none other than my man, Chris Trapasso. My man wears 10,000 different hats. If you are living in Western New York, upstate New York, the Midwest, wherever you want to call it, and you follow the draft, you know who my dog is. And then if you just follow Bills football, NFL at large, you got to know who Chris Trapasso is. Chris, I'm so glad you were able to make time out of your day and join. How are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing great, and that is quite the introduction. I don't know if I'm that good of a follow, but I will say this time of year, you will get a lot of takes from me on a wide range of prospects, pick 1 through pick 252.
The one thing before, we'll start with the Bills, but
Yeah.
this is on the tip of my tongue right now. The one thing I appreciate about you, we live in a space where everyone is scared to give their opinions, and especially with the draft, because it's not like we have access to every single one of these players all times of year. Mm-hmm. But you do a really good job. You're like, nope, I see it this way. I'm going to stand 10 toes on it. So for the people at home, we are not getting cookie cutter here. We're getting Chris Trapasso, who has researched every single thing he's about to say, and he says it with his chest. So I really appreciate that with you wholeheartedly. But like I mentioned, let's start with the Buffalo Bills and their offseason to this point. Mentioning the draft, the trade acquiring Bears wide receiver DJ Moore, bringing in a Bradley Chubb, a CJ Gardner-Johnson. Just what do you make of the moves the Bills have made over the last 3 weeks or so?
I thought they would have been a little bit more aggressive in free agency, but as we saw with the Connor McGovern signing before free agency started, and even that trade for DJ Moore happening before the start of free agency, I think the Bills had these locked in targets beforehand. And I think DJ Moore is a big acquisition. I actually think he's a little bit underrated. He's been held back by quarterback play for most of his career. And I know that wide receivers do tend to age pretty quickly once they get to 28, 29, and certainly into their 30s. But this is a guy that had a 1,300 plus yard season with Justin Fields as his quarterback in that first season in Chicago. So I think it was kind of the classic Brandon Beane offseason where outside, like maybe that there'll be one big swing, Stephon Diggs, Von Miller. This one was DJ Moore, but Bradley Chubb and D. Alford, and even bringing back Connor McGovern, I think those were good value signings that will provide value to this team. Now, a few of the free agent signings the last couple of seasons, particularly at wide receiver, Curtis Samuel, chief among them, didn't really work out, and injuries were a big part of that. But I really believe that DJ Moore can be that 8 to 12 target per game wide receiver. D. Alford is the perfect man coverage replacement for Taron Johnson. And Bradley Chubb was built to rush in a 3-4 system as kind of that stand-up outside linebacker. Not too concerned about stopping the run, but does have that full arsenal of pass rush moves to be a really good complement to Gregory Rousseau in this defense.
I'm glad you mentioned the DJ Moore acquisition in that light where, hey, they went in a class above where they usually go in free agency. Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, those are guys, they were fine players, even good players in the previous stops, but no one will say they were number 1, 2 wide receivers by any means. Listen, Brad, regardless of who you think DJ Moore is as a player, he is a Fifth Avenue type of wide receiver. And what I mean by that, anyone who's been down to New York City, you go down Fifth Ave, we talking Louis, Prada, Givenchy, all the good bags down there. And that's the type of player that you hope DJ Moore can be. You never envision a Josh Palmer or Curtis Samuel as that type of player. That is the dream with DJ Moore, and I have no problem with them shopping in that aisle. It remains to be seen if it works, but I have no issue with them going for that swing. On the other side of the ball, you mentioned D. Alford and Bradley Chubb. The one player that piqued my interest, because I think it kind of shifts how the Buffalo Bills are going forward. This new era under Joe Brady and Brandon Beane as president of football ops. CJ Gardner-Johnson, and this goes beyond who he is as a football player. It's also his personality and how he is, his journey to get to this point. I'll just say that. When you got the notification from Adam Schefter or Pelissero, whoever broke that news, that the Buffalo Bills were signing CJ Gardner-Johnson, what was your initial reaction?
My first reaction was, this would never have happened if Sean McDermott was still the head coach. I mean, this guy has been on so many different teams, and Brandon Beane spoke to it that everywhere he's been, his team has been a winning team, and the defenses have been pretty darn good. He was in Chicago. He was in Houston. Obviously started, with the Saints. He's someone that is just that pesky player that maybe his act kind of wears thin in some places, but I do think it was interesting in the piece by Sal Majorana there in Rochester, had the one-on-one with Brandon Beane that referenced that John Fox, who they brought into the coaching staff, had him in Detroit when he was there. And that was a pretty pesky, opportunistic Lions defense. There's a few other coaches that are part of this new coaching staff that have experience and are familiar with the type of player and the type of personality that CJ Gardner-Johnson is. What I like from him on the field is that the versatility is the first thing everyone thinks of, but his best season in 2024 with the Philadelphia Eagles, where he won a Super Bowl, he was mostly a free safety that was allowed to just watch the eyes of the quarterback, plant and drive on the football, run the alley against outside screens, outside run plays, and show his ability to tackle in space from that role. And I think that is specifically what this Bills defense needed to allow Cole Bishop to play closer to the box. So he's probably not a name that most people, including myself, had at the top of the wish list in free agency as safety. But when you see that it's not a very expensive deal and you realize that everywhere he's been an opportunistic, productive player, and you figure that the Bills still have that really close-knit, very player-friendly locker room, this was probably one of the better signings of all of free agency in the entire NFL.
Chris, you got to work with me for like 2 minutes here. I got to get off my chest. I said it last week, and I'm going to rehash it again here on the Mafia Huddle. Make sure that you tell your sister, your mother, your brother about the things we're doing here. 2 minutes about CJ Gardner-Johnson. Here we go. For the last 9 years, we have heard and been talked to about Sean McDermott's culture and how the things that they have done in Western New York is unique. And I think the proof is in the pudding. The players who have left, and then come back again. The players who speak glowingly of a city that snows half of the season, where you got these young men who are millionaires and they are willing to live in Western New York to play football. I think that is such an underrated facet that I will never take for granted, because I am also young, and if I had millions of dollars, I want to play for the Miami Dolphins. But that is neither here nor there. So I want to give Sean McDermott his flowers for the culture that he built. Having said that, I do think to a certain extent we have kind of overvalued that word when it comes to playing football at the end of the day. 2 years ago, that Netflix documentary came out with Kevin Durant talking about the France team, and France was like, listen, we've been together 10 years, right? We've been blood, sweat, and tears. We know each other like the back of our hands, man. And then Kevin Durant was like, yeah, is all that chemistry going to help y'all when y'all got to guard Steph Curry? And that's how I feel when it comes to construction and team building philosophy. I don't think Sean McDermott ever turned down a more talented player because they wouldn't fit. But listen, if the things were equal and he was like, listen, that guy's ruffled some feathers in some other places, I don't know if he would fit here. I think that's where CJ Gardner-Johnson comes into the picture here. And listen, I don't know if he'll work out. He's been on 6 teams in 6 years for a reason. I have no idea. But it's a risk that you take. It's a 1-year deal. The money isn't that compromising if it doesn't work out. I love the move for all the reasons that you just laid out. But I just wanted to just throw that out there, because a lot of people have said, what if he doesn't fit in the culture? And I'm like, this is football, man. I don't know what you want me to tell you. This ain't 7th grade. I'm trying to win championships here. And if it don't work out, cool. Next year, move on. But I'm not trying to build a bunch of choir boys. I'm not saying that the team was like that before, but I am trying to build the best football team possible. And I believe if you get a bunch of alpha males who are going for the same goal, the culture is going to be, we want to win. Point blank, period. And I had to get off my chest. That's been sitting on my heart for a long time, Chris. But that's just how I feel about the CJ Gardner-Johnson. And everyone keeps saying, what if he ruins the culture? Yeah, but what if he gets you 7 interceptions? How about that?
Yeah, and how about the fact that if you do still have this really good culture, then one player, a 1-year deal safety, should not mess up the culture and blow it up completely. And if anything, he seems like a similar personality to Tre'Davious White, who's very personable with the media. He's going to say some funny things here or there, but between the lines on game day, he's going to be one of the most ferocious competitors out there. I think there's a lot of similarities between those two. And that's so ironic that Tre'Davious White was the first draft pick in the Sean McDermott era, and he's been back like 3 times. So I think everything that you just laid out makes a ton of sense. And me, as someone that's not interviewing these players and doesn't get to know them from a personality standpoint, I'm really evaluating them in the draft, and then that's essentially it until I'm evaluating them in the NFL. I have always been a big proponent of, yes, culture matters, but let's not overrate culture too much. And I think the underlying element to the Bills' creation of this great culture is good players like
Yes.
Josh Allen and Deion Dawkins and Matt Milano and Taron Johnson and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. They were instrumental in instilling a winning culture that has been here in Buffalo for almost a decade now.
Yeah, we heard about the Patriot Way for 2 decades, and then Tom Brady left, and then that Patriot Way went away. I don't know. I think good players matter more than anything at the end of the day. Let's move on to the draft. And this year's draft there's been a lot of themes thrown out. Hey, maybe top heavy or may not a lot of blue chippers. For those who have come to the draft cycle late, or they just aren't big college football fans and they have no idea who this Indiana quarterback is, they heard Ohio State's good. They're good every single year, but how in the Lord do they have 3, 4 players on the defensive side of the ball that could be first-round picks? Give me just a quick summation of just what this draft is. Are we talking about a bunch of blue chippers at the top, like in 2021 where they had all of those guys? Are we talking about, hey, you may not, the top 10 here or there, but then from like pick 11 to 60 is like the money zone? From your opinion, you've evaluated this draft for the last few months. How do you view this draft?
It is probably what you mentioned first, that it's not a blue chip heavy draft at the top. Like if you're a team picking in the top 3, top 5, top 10, you would have much more rather it be 2024 with Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. It is not that class. I think a few of the players beyond Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback from Indiana, who's going to be the first overall pick, like the Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, I think their upside is all pro caliber, but I think they're so young, they still need to develop a little bit once they get to the NFL. Typically, there's 3 to 7 finished products that are athletic, that were crazy productive, that are 22, maybe sometimes they're younger, but 22, 23 years old, ready to go off the bus. I think in this class, because it lacks the Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams quarterback, and a lot of these skill position players are more developmental-ish, I think it is a better class from picks 11 through 60, like you referenced. It's actually one of the better classes in that regard. But if you're picking inside the top 10, a lot of those picks that will go in those first 10 selections would probably be second half of the first round selections in most drafts.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so I got a bunch of friends who follow the draft, and they're like, dang, the one year that we in the top 6 or whatever and got a quarterback glaring need, yeah, we don't have to reach on Ty Simpson. Don't know if that's the case. Let's go position by position here. Some positions that maybe Bill's Mafia is interested in. Got to start with the sexy guys, the wide receivers, the position that I hate so much. When we talk about those players, you mentioned there isn't a Malik Neighbors, maybe not a Marvin Harrison as a prospect. Obviously, no Jamar Chases of that ilk. But now that you've graded these players and evaluated them, let's go with the top. How do you cluster this class? Like, how do you cluster the wide receivers? Is there like a top 2? Is there a 3, 4? How do you do it?
I have a top 3, and it's a little different than the consensus, and maybe I'll be wrong, but we've certainly seen that throughout the years. It's not always just the first, second, and third wide receivers who become the first, second, and third wide receiver in terms of how good they are in the NFL. Mekhi Lemon, to me, is an Amon-Ra St. Brown clone. Same school, slot demon who catches everything. He's sneaky good after the catch. He's super duper feisty, is going to make those difficult grabs in traffic and just be the well-rounded slot receiver that Amon-Ra St. Brown has been. After that, and not very far behind him, is Casey Concepcion, in my opinion. I always watch quarterbacks first because I don't want any pre-draft hype bias. Then I've switched to wide receivers as the second position I watch for the same reason. I was not predisposed to Jordan Tyson has to be wide receiver 1 or 2 or Carnell Tate. Concepcion is a 3-level winner. He has an awesome release package. He did it early in his career at NC State. He was productive there. And then last season, even though there was a few drops on film, contested catches, downfield wins, again, getting open underneath, intermediate level, deep with route salesmanship, suddenness. I think he is very close. He's kind of in that Doug Baldwin to Jackson Smith and Jigba range in terms of the type of player. And then for me, the end of the top 3 in this class is Omar Cooper Jr., who ironically was at Indiana, was loaded with all these transfers. He was a homegrown talent there in Bloomington. And ironically, too, reminds me very much of DJ Moore when he was coming out of Maryland. He's big, strong, not 6'2", 225, but right around 6 foot, a little over 200 pounds. And it is a boulder after the catch. He turns into a running back, catches everything. And as we saw at the combine, he tested well enough that he can be a separator as well. He's not going to separate like a Devontae Adams or like a Stephon Diggs in his prime, but I think his athleticism is good enough to eventually in time become a wide receiver 1 in this class. I love Carnell Tate. I think Jordan Tyson has big time upside because he's so young, but they're just a little bit graded lower for me in this class. I still think they'll go in the first round, but those 3 to me, Lemon, Concepcion, and Omar Cooper Jr., I think are the most well-rounded wide receivers in this class.
I love that 3 from various different reasons. One, correct me if I'm wrong here. When I look at wide receivers just wide receivers in general, you look at the NFL with more zone coverage than ever, right? And if you are manned up, it's third down. You got these long corners in your face, basically. The 2 traits that I'm looking for: can you separate? And when you got the ball in your hands, can you make something shake? And those 3 guys that you mentioned, they have those in spades. I mean, Mekhi Lemon is excellent with the ball in his hands. He does a good job with feel underneath. Concepcion plays like he has 3 rockets up his behind. I mean, my boy just always looks like he has some juice. I actually just watched his matchup with Mansour Delane the other day. For those who don't know, he's the LSU cornerback who's probably going to go top 15 this year. Great matchup, really good matchup. And even though he didn't get a lot of targets his way, when they were matched up, you saw the juice. So I'm a big fan of his. Also, for those who don't know, he was born and raised in Rochester, New York, Western New York native. So there is a bit of a tie there for the hometown vibe. And his family knows all about the Buffalo Bills. So we learned that at the NFL Combine as well. Also has a pretty unique, this is separate of who he is as a football player. He has a stutter. And he is someone that is trying to grow through it, and he went through the Combine. I got mad respect for him for that. And that's just someone on a personal level. I'm definitely rooting for that brother in his journey. And then Omar Cooper, I hated him for like 16 weeks. For those who don't know, I'm from Ohio State fan. But then as the year went on, he continued to make play after play, and the volume's not there because they just didn't pass the ball a lot. But I saw the traits, and I'm a big fan of his as well. If we were to map this out for the people at home, you mentioned Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson. Are there any players where you're saying, yeah, I don't see the Bills even being in striking range of acquiring them? Because, for example, let's make the cutoff pick 15 here. Let's say that. Let's say the Bills don't want to go higher than 15. I don't know. For whatever the case may be, let's go 15. Are there any players that you are pretty certain will go before 15?
I think Lemon will be gone, and I think Carnell Tate will be gone, because even though Carnell Tate ran 4.53 at the combine, he looks faster than that on film. And he had like a Justin Jefferson level of contested catch win rate in his final season at Ohio State, which I never thought we'd ever see. It was like over 80% that he was coming down with the football in traffic. And there's obviously that pedigree that you know, Carl, very well, being a Ohio State wide receiver, that they're all just coached really well, and separation is king at that program. So I think those 2, I'm pretty sure will be gone. I think Jordan Tyson has the buzz to be a top 15 overall pick, or top half of the first round. Let's cut it off at 16. But the hamstring injury, I think, is lingering. The fact that he didn't work out at the Arizona State Pro Day, didn't work out at the Combine, there could be some reluctance for teams to pick him there. But I really think at wide receiver, it's only those 2, Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate, that I think are locked into the top half of the first round.
I got one more name that Bills Mafia has seen their favorite mock draft people mock them to the Buffalo Bills for like the last 3 months. His name's been getting some buzz, and you know I'm going to mention Denzel Boston. Are you a fan of his game? Do you see the fit? When people say he is a Keon Coleman clone, what is your reaction?
He is not a Keon Coleman clone. He is legitimately very good in rebounding situations. That was the one what should I say, like fallacy about Keon Coleman, that if you watch that final season at Florida State, his contested catch win rate was like around 30%, which is not very good. Denzel Boston is a rebounder. His was well over 50% last season, and just steadily increased his production as he saw more targets at Washington. He's a little bit bigger than Coleman. I don't think he's going to separate a ton, and that's why I have him as like a late first, early second round grade on my board right now. But everything else about his game, if they want size and physicality at the X position, I mean, we figured that they just traded for that with DJ Moore. But if they want more size on the outside, Denzel Boston probably is the most physically imposing of the perceived top 5 to 7 wide receivers in this class. And importantly, he plays to like the 6'3", 220 that he is. Not going to give you a ton post catch and is not going to separate against the Derek Stingleys of the world. But if you want to throw back shoulder, fades in the end zone, or just hope that he comes down with a post route with that safety coming from the deep middle, Denzel Boston is the type to do that. So he is a little bit of a specialist, which is why he's outside of that top 3 for me. And like I said, not extremely well-rounded like Lemon, Concepcion, and Cooper, but certainly has a niche that can be really useful in today's NFL.
I'm big on Concepcion. I really am. I'm a big fan. And for those who don't know, Texas A&M's quarterback was not good, to say the least, and being respectful here. So didn't have a lot of opportunities, but with the opportunities that he did get, he made things shake. Let's go over to the much more interesting side of the ball, the side of the ball that everyone cares about defensively. It's once again, there's not any Myles Garrett's, no Nick Bosa's, no Joey Bosa's in this draft. But there are still some compelling players and players that if the Bills were to stick and pick at 26, I think Bills Mafia should be pretty geeked up that they will come to Buffalo. Are there any, let's start with the trenches. Are there any players up front where you're like, ooh-wee, if he's there at 23 or if he's there at 26, yeah, Brandon Beane, pull the trigger.
Cassius Howell, Casey Concepcion's teammate from Texas A&M, I think would just be, other than him having very short arms, like right around the Ruben Bain length that has drawn so much controversy, everything else about Cassius Howell's game screams like, oh my God, if he's there and a lot of the receivers aren't there, the Bills need to call him the pick immediately. He is your stand-up, bendy, explosive rush linebacker, transferred into the SEC and was really, really good, was in the MAC previously and didn't skip a beat. He is someone that I think has what the Bills have been lacking at the edge rusher position. And maybe that was a Sean McDermott against Jim Leonard stylistic type that they wanted on the edge. But we're assuming that Jim Leonard wants those 3-4 rush linebackers that can just rush with their hair on fire around the corner. That is Cassius Howell in this class. If he's there at 26, even though I always lean offense, I got to tell you, Carl, which you probably don't love that, but I do still understand that probably priority 1 or 2 is edge rusher, and Cassius Howell, to me, seemingly like where he's going to fall. If he gets around 26, I think it'll be hard for the Bills to pass on him.
Listen, I just saw what Jackson Smith and Jigba just got paid the other day. You will never be able to tell me a wide receiver in the first round is a bad idea. Listen, there are a lot of arguments that I'm willing to fight tooth and nail on. I just saw JSN got paid the GDP of a small island. You can never tell me a receiver is a bad idea in the first round. No, I'm right with you with Cassius Howell and his archetype. I was also of the belief when they brought in Bradley Chubb, I'm like, okay, I see the fit. He's a 3-4 guy, but he's kind of built similarly in terms of stylistically to what Sean McDermott had. Power rusher. He's going to run through your face. Cassius Howell, I'm not saying he is Nick Bonito, but for those at home, if you need a visual of how they win, it's speed, juice, bendy, trying to run the hoop. That is the type of player that Cassius Howell is, but he apparently has T-Rex arms is the reason why he's not a top 10 pick. Let's go to the back 7 here. Ignore cornerbacks because for how much I would love the Buffalo Bills to draft one in the first round, I would have a phone call with Brandon Beane to be very shocked if they drafted one in round 1. Whether it is at backer or at safety, is there a prospect or two that you have your eye on?
The safety class is the best safety class from top to bottom that I've scouted now. I still have more to watch, but it is so good. It is tremendous, and it's not just Caleb Downs. It is Dylan Thieneman from Oregon. He would actually be the prospect, which I knew that we were going to get to D-backs, and I wanted to save this answer. If Dylan Thieneman is there at 26, even though if you're looking at difference in money from the rookie deals all the way to the top of the position, it's not quite as big of a disparity at safety, not even close, to edge rusher or receiver. Beyond that, Dylan Thieneman, I think, could be a 4 to 7 interception per season guy, and 80 to 100 tackle type player. He's like Jim Leonard was on the field, but bigger and significantly more explosive and twitchier. He is the consummate free safety who I think would be really, really good. And even Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who I was calling the Mac Nickamanwari, because that's the type of player that he was last year. He's not quite as big, not quite as fast as Nickamanwari, who was a really integral piece in what the Seahawks did in that run to winning the Super Bowl. He would also be a lot of fun too, because he tested well, not quite as well as Dylan Thieneman, who was overshadowed by him, but in a lot of other classes, those three safeties would all be safety number one. So that is a position that I think is the dark horse to be the first pick for the Bills at number 26 overall, if a lot of the receivers and the edge rushers are off the board.
I knew I loved you. Love the DB talk. Love the safety talk. I was hip to Thieneman when he was at Purdue. I forget who they played, but he was a fantastic player there. He hit the transfer portal. I was like, hey, Ryan Day, if you need $5 from me, I'll go help you go get Thieneman. He, of course, went to the Oregon Ducks. His game against Penn State where he got the game-sealing interception, that's when I was sold. I'm like,
he is so rangy.
Yeah.
He's so rangy, and he had 6 interceptions as a true freshman at Purdue. A couple seasons, like right around 100 tackles. He's just like a ball player who happens to be a freaky athlete too. And those typically become the really, really good players in the NFL.
Can't teach traits, man, ball instincts. You cannot teach those. Let's wrap this up. I'll give you about a minute or so. Let's go day 2. Let's say for some godforsaken reason the Bills get into the second round, whether they trade back, trade up, whatever the case may be. Obviously, got to go with the darlings, the wide receivers. Is there a receiver on day 2 that you have your eye on that you think will fit well in Buffalo?
I love Ted Hurst from Georgia State. He reminds me, I just called the Toledo safety, the Mac Nickamanwari. Ted Hurst reminds me of the small school Des Bryant. That's the type of player he was. The my ball mentality to just go up there and rebound it. He's like 6'3", 200 pounds, sneaky fast, pretty good suddenness. So Ted Hurst, maybe even Zachariah Branch, if he falls all the way to the 3rd round at pick 91, really good in the screen game and has some vertical juice. So those 2 receivers, I'm keeping my eye on the most for the Bills if they don't go receiver in the 1st round.
Love those 2 prospects. 2 from me. I like Brazel. I think he's more of he's a high upside player, but there's also a really low floor. Those skinny guys, I don't know how they always translate. And then a player who's just rock solid because I was watching him a lot for his teammate, but then he overshadowed him. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, just a rock solid.
He's smooth.
Just a real smooth player. I don't think he's going to be your wide receiver 1, but if you need a 2 or a 3, he'll slide right in and get you 500 yards in day 1 of his career. Chris, thank you so much. Hopefully people at home learn something and make sure they follow your work up until the draft and beyond, because I already know that you're going to be looking at – he's a crazy guy, guys. He's always watching for prospects. He's probably already got Jeremiah Smith's tape cut up for the 2027 draft. Chris, I thank you so much, and I appreciate you stopping by for the Mafia Huddle.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Mafia Huddle. Make sure, before we get up out of here, tell your sister, your mother, your brother about the things that we're doing here. You guys be safe and have a fantastic evening.